John chapter 13 is a deeply significant chapter in the Gospel of John, taking place during the Last Supper, just before Jesus' betrayal and arrest. In this chapter, Jesus demonstrates the full extent of his love for his disciples through his humble service and prepares them for the coming events by teaching them key lessons on love, humility, and sacrifice. It also marks the beginning of his farewell discourse, where he shares important teachings with his disciples before his crucifixion. In verses 1 through 17, the chapter opens by stating that Jesus knew his time had come. His hour had arrived to leave the world and return to the Father. Jesus and his disciples are gathered for the Passover meal, commonly known as the Last Supper. During the meal, Jesus rises, takes off his outer garments, and wraps a towel around his waist, preparing to wash the feet of his disciples. Foot washing was typically a servant's task, a lowly and humbling chore, and it shocks the disciples that Jesus, their Lord and teacher, would do this. Jesus begins with Peter, who initially protests, saying, "You shall never wash my feet." Peter believes it is inappropriate for Jesus to humble himself in this way. However, Jesus responds, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Peter, eager to be close to Jesus, then says, "Then Lord, not just my feet but my hands and my head as well." Jesus gently corrects Peter, explaining that only his feet need to be washed because he is already clean, but not all of them are clean, referring to Judas, who was about to betray Jesus. After washing their feet, Jesus asks, "Do you understand what I have done for you?" He explains that he, their teacher and Lord, has washed their feet as an example of how they should serve one another. He concludes with a key teaching. "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." This act symbolizes humility and the servant leadership that Jesus calls his followers to practice. Jesus tells them that they are blessed if they understand and practice this example of humble service. In verses 18 through 30, Jesus reveals that one of his disciples will betray him. He says, "I'm not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen. But this is to fulfill the passage of Scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me." This passage refers to a prophecy in Psalm 41:9. The disciples are distressed, and they begin to question who it could be. Peter motions to John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, to ask Jesus who the betrayer is. Jesus responds by dipping a piece of bread into the bowl and giving it to Judas Iscariot, signaling Judas as the betrayer. Jesus tells him, "What you are about to do quickly." Judas leaves the room, and the text notes that it was night, symbolizing the darkness of Judas's betrayal and the coming suffering of Jesus. In verses 31 through 35, Jesus speaks about the coming of his glorification, his death, resurrection, and return to the Father. He declares, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him." He tells his disciples that he will be with them only a little longer. The disciples will not be able to follow him where he is going, but he reassures them that they will follow later. Jesus gives them a new commandment, saying, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." He emphasizes that their love for one another will be the defining characteristic of his followers, saying, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." In verses 36 through 38, Peter, always eager and passionate, asks Jesus where he is going, but Jesus responds that Peter cannot follow him now, though he will follow later. Peter, not understanding, declares, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answers with a prediction, saying, "Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. This prophecy foreshadows Peter's denial of Jesus in the coming hours, highlighting the disciples' human weaknesses in contrast to Jesus' divine nature. There are 5 key themes in John chapter 13. 1. Humility and servant leadership. Washing the disciples' feet exemplifies the humility and servant leadership that Jesus calls his followers to embrace. Jesus, the teacher and Lord, serves his disciples by doing the work of a lowly servant, demonstrating that true greatness in God's kingdom comes through humble service. 2. Love one another. Jesus introduces the new commandment to love one another as he has loved us. This love is not merely a sentiment, but is active, sacrificial, and demonstrated through actions. Loving one another is the mark of true discipleship and the way the world will recognize Jesus' followers. 3. Betrayal and fulfillment of Scripture. Jesus predicts Judas's betrayal, which fulfills Old Testament prophecies like Psalm 41:9. This act of betrayal is part of God's sovereign plan for salvation, even though it involves deep human treachery. 4. The predictive prophecy of Peter's denial. Jesus' prediction that Peter will deny him 3 times is a foreshadowing of Peter's failure and a reminder of the frailty of human commitment. Despite his bold statements of loyalty, Peter's weakness will be exposed, showing that even the most devoted followers of Jesus need his grace and redemption. 5. Jesus' glorification through death. Jesus speaks of his glorification as the time when he will be lifted up, through his crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. His death will be the ultimate display of God's glory, and it is through his sacrifice that God's plan of salvation will be accomplished. John 13 invites us to reflect on humility and love. These are qualities that Jesus embodies perfectly and calls us to emulate. His act of washing the disciples' feet serves as a powerful symbol of how we should serve one another, even in the humblest of ways. The commandment to love one another stands as the most important instruction for Jesus' followers, as it is through love that we demonstrate our identity as disciples of Christ. This chapter also serves as a reminder of the betrayal and denial that will soon take place. Judas and Peter's actions reflect the reality of human sin, yet even in the face of this, Jesus' love remains unwavering. Ultimately, Jesus calls us to examine how we live out these qualities of love and service in our own lives, as we follow the example set by Jesus. Are you willing to serve others humbly? Are you prepared to live in a way that reflects the love of Christ? To love and pray for those you're disagreed with, and those that you might consider your enemies, as Jesus calls us to in Matthew 5:43 through 46. How do you respond to his call to humility, servanthood, and to love one another?